When we last left the Doctor, she had to contend with yet another platoon of irate Judoon. They were invading a small village near Sheffield, and without any regard for human life, they were searching for a fugitive, which turned out to be the Doctor herself, from the past or the future or an alternate timeline, whatever. Luckily, she was able to help herself and find out a little bit more about what the Master did by his destroying Gallifrey again. Also, Captain Jack Harkness dropped by to drop some clues about someone called the Lone Cybermen, and to tell her not to give it what it wants. I wonder where this is going to go. Well, first, we find Team TARDIS has been split up for a little while, investigating various occurrences throughout the world. We find an astronaut has been knocked off course on his return trip to Earth and disappeared. We meet his husband, an ex-cop who refuses to let the authorities deal with the disappearance. And we also meet Suki, who is working on filtering microplastics out of the water, air, and dirt. Also, throughout this whole investigation is a mystery of why birds are acting strange and attacking people, infecting them with some sort of virus or bacteria that turns you into dust after briefly turning you into a pile of what look like shark teeth. Eventually, the astronauts revealed as the victim of cruel science experiments in Hong Kong, I believe it was, or Tokyo, somewhere in Japan. And eventually, Team TARDIS forms back up on Madagascar, where Suki and her partner are working, although the partner doesn't last long. He gets attacked by birds. And we also meet a young woman who travels with her partner, who sadly, after seeing an African river get destroyed by garbage, the partner gets killed by birds, infecting her with the bacteria. So, Team TARDIS, Suki, the travel blog girl, and the astronaut and his husband, the cop, are all on Madagascar trying to figure out what's going on. And because of Yaz's impetuous nature, she follows one of several mysterious gas mask wearing characters who are responsible for the experiments. And they end up at the bottom of the Indian Ocean in a bubble of plastic. Something is using or converting the plastic on Earth. At first the Doctor thinks autons, but turns out no. It's actually Suki herself that's responsible. She's not human, and neither are the gas mask wearing fellows. They come from a world devastated by this bacteria, and they brought this bacteria to Earth to study it because we have way too much plastic. It's in the air, it's in the food, it's in the water, it's in the dirt, it's in our bodies, unfortunately. And eventually, with the help of the Doctor's TARDIS, they figure out a cure that saves the astronaut from being turned into dust. But unfortunately, the experimental cure was geared towards humans and not Suki's species, whatever it may be. She looks human, but apparently isn't. At least not enough for the cure to work. But, thankfully, the Doctor is able to take the cure that was geared towards humans and use Suki's spaceship to disperse it in the atmosphere. The ex-police officer, more than willing to sacrifice himself to get the job done, but thankfully the Doctor manages to get him off the ship onto her TARDIS before it explodes. And thus the day is saved, although sadly the impetuousness of Suki most likely led to the destruction of her race, and there's no helping them. But Earth is saved, and the astronaut, the police officer, and the travel blog girl decide to become 3 idiots traveling, which can sort of sum up Team TARDIS at times. So moving on, here we end up in an ancient village in Syria. Well, the village is set. The village is in 1380, so I don't know if that counts as ancient. I guess it would. We meet a young woman. Who apparently knew that some sort of creatures were coming to attack her hospital. Apparently she's sort of a nurse, nun type. Possibly the very, very old precursor to the cat nuns on New Earth. But that's just my headcanon. Anywho, turns out she was right. The creatures attack and either kill or drag away all the young nuns' compatriots. Meanwhile, in the present, a creepy bald dude is using his detachable fingers to infect people with nightmares. Why? We don't know yet. But with Graham, instead of nightmares, he has visions of a woman trapped in a sphere caught between 2 planets. And she's begging for help. So the Doctor investigates, picks up the nun, even though she's a little out of her depth. Hello, Katarina 2.0. Let's hope she doesn't end the same way as Katarina 1.0 did. Anywho, so after finding out several people have vanished from the 21st century, including Ryan's best friend, who's suffering from depression, and a little dejected that Ryan has been out of contact for a while. It's the same token with Yaz's sister. They're both not basically looking out for their Earth families. But eventually, the 2 planets with the sphere caught between them is discovered, and thanks to a little Time Lord jiggery-pokery, the Doctor and company managed to free the woman, who, as it turns out, is a deity-class life form along with the bald man. They are in the same ilk as the Toy Maker. Remember him? Yeah. My guess is they're part of a similar family. But while the toy maker liked to manipulate the physical world for his own pleasure, these two, similar to the Dream Lord that the 11th Doctor crossed swords with, they like to manipulate the dream world. It seems they are responsible for manipulating the two worlds until eventually people started to wake up figuratively and literally. And so they made the ultimate sacrifice, turning their two planets into a sort of prison, locking away the woman while the man fled. But eventually he figured out a way to free her, to start all of this nonsense over again on Earth, thanks to the Doctor and company. Luckily, their abilities worked too well on the young sister, the nun. I'm going to call her a sister. The monsters that were of her nightmares, they became so manifest that she eventually conquered her fear and learned to control them. And so, with a little help from the Doctor, the monster, the male deity, and the female deity all got locked in the sphere and put back between the planets, never to trouble the waking or dream worlds again. And not sure if the Doctor wiped the young sister's memory this time, but who knows. After that, the Doctor decides on a whim to check out Mary Shelley when she pens Frankenstein. And we get to meet Lord Byron and a couple other people. And we find out that Mary Shelley has a son and a husband, Mr. Shelley. But Mr. Shelley is, for some reason, not around. He's gone walkabout. Unfortunately, things get kind of creepy because things start moving around of their own accord. The house seems to fold in on itself, becoming a maze, and a strange figure emerges from the lake. Oh, and parts of a skeleton that one of the house's residents owns comes to life and gets violent. Eventually, it's revealed that Mr. Shelley discovered what looked to be a lump of mercury in his estate's pond. And when he picked it up, it bonded with him. And it made him temporarily invisible. Eventually, driven just a little bit crazy by the images he was seeing from it, because apparently he was intelligent, he retreated to the basement, where he was eventually found, and it's revealed that the mercury is actually a compressed memory and database of the Cybermen. And the figure, turns out that was someone transmitting in, the lone Cyberman. A half-finished Cyberman forged from a male human who apparently volunteered. He's still got his emotions, and he is pure rage. He kills the house's butler and nanny to the baby, the son of Shelley, but spares the littlest Shelley for some reason. And this prompts Mary to maybe try and reach what little humanity this guy has left Only there's none left to be had. He's 100% pure rage and hatred. He's like a cyber Dalek. So eventually, the Doctor has to trick Mr. Shelley into believing he's dead so that the cyber memory, the basically the Mercury, leaves his body and briefly enters the Doctor. But the lone Cyberman plans to execute everyone there and start raining destruction from his ship, which recharged him after he had lost power briefly. So the Doctor has no choice but to, despite Captain Jack's warning, give the lone Cyberman what he wants. And so he leaves. And with that, the bad weather that kept everyone in the house the whole episode disperses, and the Shelleys and their guests, at least the surviving ones, are all free to go back to their lives. But not before the Doctor gets some coordinates that Mr. Shelley had been scribbling while he was under the influence of the cyber memory, which take them all to future Earth, where humanity and the Cybermen have nearly wiped each other out. Only a few survivors remain on either side, and the Doctor at first tries to talk down the lone Cyberman, but that fails. So she's forced to send most of Team TARDIS away with the surviving humans. And eventually the humans reach a derelict cyber ship, a carrier, for a massive army of Cybermen. And they try to use it to reach this portal that will take them outside of the galaxy, away from any Cybermen left. And eventually the Doctor and Ryan and a couple other survivors follow them in a stolen cyber ship, a little fighter. Very neat little design too. Eventually they all converge on the portal, but not before the lone Cyberman and his two Cybus-era Cybermen show up to take over the ship and rejigger the dormant Cybermen on there to be fully inorganic. Because that's the lone Cyberman's plan. Create fully inorganic cyber kind, and then release a particle of energy that will destroy all life in the universe. If it's released to the right area. And the lone Cyberman plans to completely cyber-convert before that happens. Now, the Cybermen under his control, they're okay. They have slightly large heads, similar to the ones spanning the end of the Troughton era all the way to the end of the McCoy era. But these heads are slightly smaller, and I actually like this design. So, yeah. Although I don't like the sound of their voice. They kept the Cybus era voice, and I wish they'd gone with the Siberiad versions of the voice. Oh well, can't have everything. Anywho, They find out that the portal is guarded by one human that's been helping people get away. And for some reason, the portal is not artificial. It's some sort of natural occurrence. You just have to step through it. No word yet on whether or not the people who go through survive, but even a fool's hope is hope. So, eventually, most of the Cybermen make it to the portal, but before anyone steps through, the Master shows up. Just hops through the portal, which shifts from its opaque pink facade to a picture of the ruined Gallifrey. And so the Master reveals his plan. He takes the Doctor and shows her apparently the truth of her life. Throughout the story, we've been seeing snippets of a young man who was found on the side of the road by a guy in Ireland. And eventually the kid's adopted. He becomes a police officer. He gets shot and falls off a cliff only to survive miraculously. And when he retires, his father is there to witness him having his memory erased, apparently. Which doesn't make sense. Until it's revealed that that whole story was actually the story of how the people of Gallifrey came to be the way they are. It seems the Gallifreyans, who weren't actually called Time Lords or even Gallifreyans back in the day, were not that special. Probably on par with Earthlings in terms of special abilities. Until one lady crafted a spaceship and decided to go exploring. And on one planet, she found a girl standing next to a portal of unknown design. She adopted her, helped raise her a bit. They explored, and eventually went home to Gallifrey, where, while playing with one of the other kids, she accidentally fell off a cliff, only to regenerate. The first time it's ever happened. So her adopted mom decided to figure out how she did this ability. Eventually she does crack the code, grafting the ability onto herself, and eventually all other Gallifreyans. The Time Lord Society that we know is built, and they rename themselves and limit the ability to regenerate to only 12 times, unless there's a special circumstance. And the timeless child's mind is wiped of these events. So who knows how long she's lived and regenerated. And we find out that this timeless child, this true founder of Time Lord Society, is none other than the Doctor. Meanwhile, the Master has tricked the lone Cybermen into making an alliance, which lasts all of 5 minutes before he betrays the Cyberman, tissue compressing, eliminating him, and collecting the cyber knowledge for himself, and using the Cybermen that are still on the ship and combining them with Time Lord DNA, giving these cyber masters the ability to regenerate when killed. And who knows if the ability is limited or not. The Master has created a hybrid race that are standing on the ruins of Gallifrey, just like the old prophecy said. And his plan is, for some reason, not to involve the destruction particle. He leaves that on some corridor. Meanwhile, Team TARDIS and the few surviving humans have to evade the old school Cybermen for a little while, before eventually making it to Gallifrey through the portal, along with the other Cybermen. And the cyber ship lands on the capital. Team TARDIS and the humans infiltrate, save the Doctor. She gets the remains of the lone Cyberman and the destruction particle, which is still active, and plans to use it to destroy every bit of life left on Gallifrey. All of it. So she commandeers another TARDIS and sends it and the humans back to Earth. And it takes the form of a house in some village. Meanwhile, the old man, who has lived long enough, allows himself to be destroyed, while at the same time pushing the button, thus completing the Doctor's plan to stop the Cybermasters and the Master. Whether any of them are destroyed or not, we don't know yet, but the Doctor has just enough time to grab a third TARDIS and get off the planet, where it goes into a remote region on Earth, transforms into a tree, and is parked right next to the Doctor's TARDIS. So yeah, the day is saved. Once again, she's the last Time Lord. And apparently she wasn't even a Time Lord. She was something else. Something timeless. Unfortunately, she can't explore this particular bit of herself, because just before she has a chance to pick up Team TARDIS from where they were dropped off, the Judoon show up again, calling her the fugitive, and teleporting her to a prison asteroid. Yeah. So 10 months go by. Yaz is still in the TARDIS house, obsessively trying to figure out how to locate the Doctor and maybe try and pilot the TARDIS, which has been locked in place. And the Doctor, meanwhile, has to go through the drudgery of prison life. Until one day when Captain Jack Harkness shows up to liberate her and himself. Which he does. This prison is pretty impressive, by the way. It's got that metal-eating mini-monster. It's got a weeping angel. It's got a rabid ood. It's got a Sycorax. It's got everything. But it no longer has the Doctor or Captain Jack. Unfortunately, Team TARDIS isn't exactly happy that the Doctor took so long to get home. Yaz is especially upset, even shoving the Doctor at one point. Which tells me that she feels a little more than just like a betrayed friend. Like there's something deeper. But anyway, there's no time for that, because as it turns out, a year prior, the remains of the Dalek scout were stolen by none other than the corporate fat cat who was responsible for the giant spiders. And he's been using them and other acquired tech to build an army of security drones that look exactly like Daleks. Only thankfully they're not armed with lethal weapons. They've got sonic deterrents, gas dispersal units, and water cannons. So thankfully these Daleks are not quite lethal. Unfortunately, the fat cat's chief nerd found a bit of Dalek DNA inside the casing that he was examining and decided to clone the thing. And before he could incinerate it on orders from the fat cat, it took him over and built a cloning facility to make more Khalid mutants. And once the humans that built the facility were done, they were liquefied and fed to the mutants. Yeah. So, when Team TARDIS goes to investigate, even taking the fat cat with them, to show him the error of his ways, it's too late. The original clone kills the nerd who's been carting him around and teleports itself and all the other mutants into the security drone bodies, thus rapidly converting them over into proper Daleks, and they start flying around exterminating humans left and right. The Doctor is facing an army of essentially Daleks who look a little bit better than the one that spawned them, in my humble opinion. Although I prefer blue over red when it comes to the lights coming off of it. Anywho, the Doctor is left with no choice but to contact a special squad of old school Daleks with the bronze design, who immediately recognize that these Daleks are impure. They have too much human DNA integrated into them, and so they are seen as an abomination. And so, once again, pure Daleks are fighting impure Daleks. Just like the good old days with McCoy's Doctor. Too bad Ace isn't here with her souped up baseball bat. Bet she'd love it. Anywho, eventually all but the original clone are destroyed, and while the clone tries to persuade his compatriots to restore him to proper Dalek form, they callously eliminate him as impure. Good riddance. Let's hope he stays that way. Unfortunately, there's still the matter of all the Daleks on Earth that now have no one but humans to deal with. Thankfully, with the help of Captain Jack, Graham, and Ryan, the Dalek spaceship is blown up. But not before the corporate fat cat tries to form an alliance with the Daleks. Although he's quickly, quote-unquote, rescued by half of Team TARDIS just before the spaceship blows up. Meanwhile, the Doctor tricks the remaining Daleks into the TARDIS house, which, thanks to the perception filter, looks like her TARDIS. They all get inside, and the Doctor bids bon voyage as that TARDIS is compressed and thrown into the void, where those Daleks are destroyed once and for all. So the day is saved. And unfortunately, thanks to a bit of sweet talking from the corporate fat cat, he's seen as a hero, acting as a distraction for the Daleks. And he gets an honorary knighthood, and there's talk of him getting back into politics. Oh boy, people never learn. Sometimes bad people die in bed. And now what to do with all the time on their hands now? It seems spending 10 months back on Earth has left an impact on Ryan. He wants to stay and watch over his world, and Graham just can't bring himself to go on without Ryan, so they both stay on Earth with a bit of psychic paper from the Doctor as a parting gift. So they maybe end up forming a spin-off team to investigate strange goings-on, but not before Ryan finally, with the blessing of Grace's spirit, learns to ride a bike. Meanwhile, Captain Jack is hooked back up with Gwen Cooper and her family to try and stick around and help clean up, leaving the Doctor and Yaz, after saying a tearful goodbye to everybody, to continue their adventures. Next stop, everywhere. And that's the end of Season 2. It was a pretty good season overall. Things got really freaky, and we met some old friends and some old enemies. Classic characters became intimidating again. Yes, I'm talking about the Cybermen and the Daleks. And we got that huge surprise concerning the Doctor's past and the very core of Time Lord society. Where we go next, who knows? But until then, this is Mr. J signing out and reminding you, the past and the future is whatever you make it. So it's probably best to focus on the now, because the now will never be here again. Cheers, folks, and remember to watch the skies, because you never know when the TARDIS might show up.